Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the 26th Annual St. Paul Heritage Preservation Awards. We're here to recognize our city's outstanding architectural and cultural heritage, along with the people and the projects that over recent years have protected that heritage. I'm Richard Dana, and I'm the current chair of the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission.
And I'm Bill Madden. I'm with the board of St. Paul Chapter, the AIA. I'm filling in for Brian Larson, our current president. And each year our two organizations come together to call for nomination for awards. We deliberate and then plan to celebrate those excellent achievements. St. Paul AIA is composed of over 400 members, and our chapter provides a platform for promoting architectural leadership, networking, outreach opportunities for all our members and surrounding community. We sponsor a lot of programs, one being the Food for Thought program, of which we'll tour the Ham building next month. So you AIA fellow members, look out in the matrix and you'll see something coming up soon.
In a moment, we'll play a special welcoming video. First, I'd like to thank the St. Paul AIA for their long-standing support and partnership. This is a joint venture, but I'm very pleased to add to that this year we have received some wonderful sponsorship from other groups. Sala Architects, Blue Stem Heritage Group, Minneapolis St. Paul Home Tour, David Hyde Design Studio, McDonald and Mack Architects, Otagawa Anschel Design and Build, our own HBC member Bill Leitner, and of course the St. Paul Department of Planning and Economic Development. So with all of that, we've been able to put together this rather special celebration tonight. I think that for a group of people who are characterized as being obsessed with the past, we do talk an awful lot about the future. And that future is what we're springboarding into tonight, with this being the eve of the 40th anniversary of the legislation that created heritage preservation in St. Paul. Coincidentally, it's 50 years this year since the National Heritage Preservation legislation was passed. So it took 10 years for people in St. Paul to realize that there was stuff that could be done on a local level, that we wanted to be running our own show, and that we wanted to be able to do the kind of designation, preservation, and acknowledgement that as a CLG on our own that we'd be able to do. The ordinance was actually adopted by City Council on May 18th in 1976. Ruby Hunt was the council president. Larry Cohen was our mayor. The next month, George Latimer would be sworn in as St. Paul's next mayor, and he carried the charge and supported the development and growth of the city's preservation program and the role of the HPC until his term ended in 1990. I knew that this had all happened in '76 and that Mayor Latimer had been mayor then, and I asked him if he could be here tonight to celebrate that because it was tomorrow that really was the big day, and that his friend Ruby had been involved. And he said, "Richard, I'll take credit for anything you want." But I was elected in April for some reason, and didn't take office until June, so I wasn't the one who was there. He is out of town, or he would be here tonight. After the presentation of the awards tonight, we hope that you will join us in recognizing our most recent HPC members who stepped down last year, but also to thank the many volunteers and staff over the 4 decades who have contributed to preservation and preserving St. Paul's heritage. Tonight, we're honoring 10 of the most noteworthy contributions to heritage preservation of the past couple years. These are contributions that embody the many values of preservation, values that strengthen our sense of history, spur investment, and keep buildings from our landfills. These 10, however, are particularly strong examples of what we can do to preserve St. Paul's history and heritage. I think that this year's awards are unusual because of the diversity in the type of awards that we're giving and how we're beginning to realize that it's not just because one particular building was preserved, but the preservation has many faces. The awards fall into 7 categories. Awards for restoration are reserved for projects that bring buildings back to a specific time in their history, often but not always near the time of initial construction, while awards for rehabilitation require the preservation of significant historic features, but allow alterations to accommodate a new use or changing human requirements. A vote of confidence award is given to a quality preservation project that may be in the initial steps in gaining momentum or starting a new step in their mission, while a stewardship award recognizing outstanding efforts toward the long-term maintenance and preservation of a historic property. An award for cultural heritage or community education goes to a project, organization, or individual making a significant contribution to the recognition of the city's cultural heritage and its value as an educational tool. And finally, we recognize organizations or individuals that have made an impact on the preservation of history and heritage in St. Paul. We'll ask the award recipients to come forward as their names are read by the presenters and come up to the front where an award certificate will be presented, and then line up to my right until all the recipients for the project are announced. After the awards are announced for a specific project, we invite any recipients who wish to talk about their role in the project or to say a few words about the project to do so using this microphone here at the podium. And before that, we'd also like to take a group photograph of the recipients. The presenters will not be introduced by either of us. They'll just come forward, introduce themselves, and we'll keep the program rolling that way. We'll start the presentation with a Cultural Heritage Preservation Award, and I'll ask City Council Member Rebecca Necker to come up and present the first award.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rebecca Naker, and I am the council member for Ward 2, and it is really my pleasure to be here tonight to recognize so many remarkable achievements, both in my favorite ward in the city and the rest of St. Paul as well. In November 2015, the Ramsey County Historical Society published Custom House, Restoring a St. Paul Landmark in Lower Town. Authored by James A. Stolpestad, the founder and a principal of the Exeter Group, Custom House is the name given to the former U.S. Post Office and Custom House, constructed in 1934 by the U.S. Postal Service and designed in the Art Deco style. The author's main goal of Custom House was to document thoroughly the history of this St. Paul landmark and how it was successfully preserved and rehabilitated for new uses. Secondly, to demonstrate the complex and nuanced history of St. Paul in the 1930s and how city leaders successfully lobbied the federal government for funding that resulted in the new post office and Custom House. Finally, the book details the process of financing and rehabilitating the Custom House in the 21st century, and if you have not yet had your tour or moved in, I highly recommend that you do quickly. Jim Stolpestad thoroughly explains the conversion of the former post office to today's Custom House and was singularly positioned to write about all the complicated details involved in preserving this historic landmark. Visually stunning with more than 220 photos, maps, and architectural drawings, the book itself is a delight to read, and the quality with which it was printed reflects the same high standards that its author gave to its content. So it is my pleasure to present a Cultural Heritage Award to James A. Stolpestad in recognition of authoring Custom House, Restoring a St. Paul Landmark in Lower Town, chronicling the history and revival of the historic Art Deco post office on Kellogg Boulevard, and to Ramsey County Historical Society in recognition of their commitment to publishing Custom House, Restoring a St. Paul Landmark in Lower Town.
It's a great pleasure to get this award, and would not have happened without this man here. He edits with a light touch. Very much appreciated. Ramsey County Historical Society is an underappreciated gem in our city, and hopefully the book will be read widely, and especially the magazine here. Thank you.
The Twin City Model Railroad Museum has been a St. Paul attraction since 1934. The museum is an all-volunteer nonprofit whose mission is to celebrate toy trains, the model railroading hobby, and consequently, the railroad history of the Twin Cities. Beginning as a club in 1934, the group behind the museum managed to get space in the Union Depot beginning in 1939. There they built, maintained, and exhibited the displays of model trains which so accurately and imaginatively captured the railroad history of this area. They delighted thousands of visitors through the years, even as the popularity of train travel waned and eventually the depot closed. The museum was, in fact, the last occupant, forced out when the lights were turned off in 1978. Thanks to a small group of core volunteers who held together, the museum was able to reopen when the railroad buildings of Bantana Square were rehabilitated in 1984. They remained there until early this year, and fortunately have found a new St. Paul space where they can reopen near the old Amtrak depot on Transfer Road. Museum volunteers have begun the work of moving the existing train layouts and building new exhibits with the hope of opening very soon. Those volunteers include Oscar Lund, the treasurer and de facto business manager whose commitment to the organization has kept it on the right track during recent financial hard times. We celebrate their achievements and their determination to keep the story of the railroads alive and fascinating by giving them our Vote of Confidence Award and await the announcement of their grand reopening. Receiving the award are longtime members Paul Gritzman, Oscar Lund, and Marianne Gritzman. If you could come up, please.
I especially am grateful on behalf of dozens of volunteers, hundreds of friends and visitors, and a really supportive community. As I pointed out, we are often misnamed the Twin Cities Model Railroad Museum, and I like to point out we are the Twin City Model Railroad Museum, a proud part of St. Paul since 1934. My friend Paul has been a part of the museum for over 40 years, working on it early with his father, who was very much involved in the early building of layouts, and so he's come with it in a very long ways. I've been on board for about the last 14 years as treasurer, and as was mentioned, who had to guide through some kind of tough financial times. But I'd like to ask two questions. How many of you had a toy train when you were growing up? Hey. How many of you have visited the Twin City Model Railroad Museum? What do you think? Come and see us. We opened for the first time this past weekend at our new site on Transfer Road. We call it a soft opening because we're still under reconstruction. But if you can believe it, the big layout in Bandana Square that saw a lot of sawzall work over a period of several weeks, the puzzle is back together and we have loops of trains running around the layout. Invite your friends, come and see us, and we're very grateful for this opportunity.
I'm back. 262 West 7th Street exemplifies a typical commercial corner store that has quietly remained alongside its high-style Victorian-era neighbors scattered along this corridor. Known as the Olson and Beckler Company Building, its front facade was removed and rebuilt when West 7th Street was widened in 1935. After the floral shop moved out, the new owner, Todd Russell, decided it was a good opportunity to reconstruct and reopen the storefront as it was in earlier times. The architect and contractor paid special attention to the design, and reconstruction of the storefront and doors of the retail space used original materials, wood, all while respecting the history of the building. The new owner has remastered an old building storefront to a traditional design to reflect the rich history of an iconic street and neighborhood. The result has reinvigorated and brought back to life what was once a tired corner in downtown St. Paul. I'm pleased to present the Rehabilitation Award to the owner, Todd Russell, in recognition of his care and vision in rehabilitating the Olson and Beckler Company Building at 262 West 7th Street in the Irvine Park Historic District, and to RLP Architects in recognition of their sensitive storefront designs that brought new vitality to the Olson and Beckler Company building, and to Personal Pride Construction in recognition of their quality craftsmanship in rehabilitating the Olson and Beckler Company building. Congratulations.
Hello, my name is Bill Leitner, and I'm an HPC member, and I get to present the next award. And this is for the Community Education Award. Over the past several years, many St. Paul neighborhoods have seen an increase in residential teardowns, whether through foreclosures, deferred maintenance, or market conditions, supporting new and pricier homes. Many St. Paul neighborhoods developed originally within a short time period. This pattern of development established architecturally diverse, but also cohesiveness in massing, detailing, and materials that speaks to the strong established character of our quaint tree-lined streets. A group of 7 citizens saw what happens when new development disrupts established character and organized Save Our St. Paul Neighborhoods, a grassroots group with a common goal: to advocate for the preservation, protection, and enhancement of our unique history, character, and natural resources of St. Paul's neighborhoods by engaging and empowering residents, supporting sustainable and respectful development, and promoting community spirit. Save Our St. Paul Neighborhoods has grown since its establishment in 2015 and has a social media presence while hosting regular monthly meetings. They strive to provide concerned St. Paul citizens information and the tools necessary to address teardowns, lot splits, and other forms of potentially harmful or disruptive development. The founding members being recognized tonight are Don and Meg Arnosti, Lori Brostrom, Tim Diamond, Jennifer Kroll, Karen Jeffords Brown, and Linda Windsor. And I want to personally thank you for the time and commitment it takes to do this kind of organizing. It takes a lot of perseverance. So the Community Education Award goes to Save Our St. Paul Neighborhoods in recognition of their grassroots efforts to encourage citywide solutions to protect established neighborhoods from irresponsible and unsustainable development through education and action. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm Don Arnosti, and I'm one of the people. The only thing I want to correct Bill about is there were a lot more than 7 people that founded us, and there are many, many people who could and should be here this evening. Some of them are planning further neighborhood protection things right now. We have members across the city in all wards, and we're looking to bring the citizen voice to the preservation and protection efforts to make sure that the neighborhoods and the communities that are affected by these decisions are well heard. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane Prince. I'm the council member for Ward 7. And tonight reminds me yet again how much I love the HPC. Without the HPC, without historic preservation and its advocates, the neighborhood I live in, Dayton's Bluff, would not have become the destination it has for the whole metro area, saving mansions, business buildings, and worker housing. Without the HPC and historic preservation, where would I go in the morning if I didn't have Sweet Hollow Cafe in the Stutzman building? It's my second home, and now it's my neighborhood office. I'm so pleased and proud to give the award to the Alexander Noble House at 361 Bates. This property was constructed in 1896 and designed by architect A.L. Dorr. However, its original design was not visible for much of its history, given the unsightly gray asbestos siding that covered the exterior. We certainly can all relate to that, though, can't we? When I moved to my neighborhood, I said to my husband, "What's with all the Menards board?" Since at least 1969, the single-family home was used as a 10-room boarding house that had become a neighborhood nuisance and eventually vacant. In 2012, the owner, Oakstone Properties, undertook a substantial rehabilitation and restoration of this rundown property with the approval from the city to convert the interior into a 10-room boarding house, the interior from a 10-room boarding house into a 4-unit multifamily dwelling. The exterior was substantially improved as well by removing the asbestos siding, revealing a shingle-style design without the shingles. With the use of remaining physical details and historic research, contractor Tom Moore paid careful attention to repairing and replacing missing siding, trim elements, and corner boards, along with careful restoration of the remaining leaded glass windows. A color scheme sympathetic to the period highlights the details, trim, and windows, which this 19th century building had hidden for so many decades. The interior floors were restored by Carlos Escobar of Escobar Hardwood Floors. With the owners and contractors' hard work, this project is a shining beacon of how private investment can turn a problem property into a neighborhood asset. Restoring a building can make a substantial improvement in the quality of life for neighbors and residents of Dayton's Bluff Historic District and community. A Restoration Rehabilitation Award goes to Oakstone Properties Incorporated in recognition of their commitment to rehabilitating the Alexander Noble House in the Dayton's Bluff Historic District, and to Tom Moore Incorporated in recognition of his endurance and attention to detail in exposing and restoring the shingle-style exterior of the Alexander Noble House at 361 Bates Avenue.
I want to thank the Historical Society for actually surviving, keeping homes that aren't being destroyed. I've been doing this for 50 years. I've gotten 3 preservation awards now, and it's a great honor to get this and to do the amount of work that we do. And these are jobs, are money pits. They are there's so much work to them, and without the Historical Society, the people would just tear them down. And that's a shame. There's so much history here. So, thank you.
The next award goes to the SYVER HAGEN House number 2. The rehabilitation of this house is yet another example of how private investment and love can not only create livable space, but goes further to restore lost architectural features and take its rightful place among the other stately Queen Anne's of the Dayton's Bluff Historic District. The owners, Daniela Bell and Eric Foster, and daughter Talia, took on the substantial restoration of this vacant, deteriorating property. Aside from the many improvements to the interior of the building, the owners chose to restore the dramatic turret roof, which had been missing for many years, rebuilt the elaborate chimney in the same design as was originally present, constructed a complementary garage, making the small parcel more usable, and landscaped the property and painted the house in a historically sensitive color scheme. The owners took a pivotal house, invested substantially within our community. They chose not to make the property simply habitable, but to completely transform this house into a showplace of Queen Anne architecture it had once been. The Foster Bell home, as we know it now, is truly a showplace for preservation within the Dayton's Bluff Historic District. To Daniela and Eric Foster and Talia, in recognition of their commitment to rehabilitate the historic SYVER HAGEN House number 2 as their family home located in the Dayton's Bluff Historic District, and to Jacqueline Fortier, LLC, in recognition of her creative interior design, creating a balance between modern and classical elements for the SYVER HAGEN House number 2, to Siri Knutson Design Studio, in recognition of their interior design for the 1885 SYVER HAGEN House number 2, honoring the Victorian era aesthetic in a modern palette, to Adagawa Anshul Design and Build in recognition of their creativity and craftsmanship in designing the barroom and upper floor bathrooms in the SYVER HAGEN House Number 2. To Flannery Construction Incorporated in recognition of their quality craftsmanship in rehabilitating the SYVER HAGEN House Number 2. To Vantage Painting in recognition of their attention to detail and design in painting the interior and the exterior. And to Historic House Colors in recognition of their careful research and recommendation of the historic color palette and placement on the SYVER HAGEN House Number 2.
I'm Daniela Bell. I'm one of the owners with Talia Bell and Eric Foster. And it's really our pleasure and our honor to live in the SYVER and Olene Hagen House. As you can see from all the people that came up with us, there were a lot of people who helped us get to this place where the house is really just a beautiful place to live. It's a wonderful place to host events for our community. And we're just thrilled to have gotten this award. And we'd like to recognize all of the people that came before us, who lived in the house, who built the house, who saved the house from being torn down. It was going to get torn down in the early 90s and was saved. So we're forever grateful that that happened, thanks to at least Carol Carey, who's in the audience, as well as other people. So thank you so much.
And still more in Dayton's Bluff. There was a recent article in strongtowns.org that was titled, "One House at a Time on St. Paul's East Side." Tonight we have seen how the preservation of our heritage takes one owner, one building, and one house at a time. However, what happens when you bring together many houses on a targeted street within the Dayton's Bluff Historic District? You get a partnership of federal, state, local, nonprofit, for-profit, community, and sustainability organizations that transform a neighborhood through preservation and stabilization. The 4th Street Preservation Project was envisioned to include a variety of stakeholders to come together to complete this transformative project of neighborhood preservation and stabilization. Historic St. Paul was a partner in this project from the early planning stages, working together with the St. Paul HRA, which made a significant investment of neighborhood stabilization project resources into the Dayton's Bluff neighborhood and its historic district. The project included complete restoration of 7 properties, including 2 duplexes, resulting in 9 dwelling units. These properties were in serious disrepair and were in a neighborhood on the brink of becoming total blight. In the immediate neighborhood, 1/4 of the properties were vacant or in foreclosure, and 1/4 were rentals. By investing in these properties, the city was able to take rundown eyesores that were bringing the neighborhood down and create valuable assets out of them to raise the value and the perception for the whole community. By selling the properties to new owners who helped stabilize the neighborhood and strengthen the fabric of the community, the project made a real difference to the people who live in and near the historic district. The impact that this project had on the surrounding community has been overwhelmingly positive. It has been a catalyst for renewal. A rehabilitation award goes to the St. Paul City Council on Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I failed to notice that when I was reviewing my notes. In recognition of their, and it's my predecessors, so thank you. In recognition of their creative vision, investment, and support for the 4th Street Preservation Project, a multi-year partnership that rehabilitated 9 homes in the Dayton's Bluff Historic District. And I can say Kathy Lantry fought like hell for this, and we owe her a huge debt of gratitude. To the Dayton's Bluff Community Council, District 4, in recognition of their community support and dedication to the 4th Street Preservation Project, and to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency in recognition of their financial commitment for the project, to the Capital Region Watershed District in recognition of their sensitive rain garden designs for the 4th Street Preservation Project, and to the Neighborhood Energy Connection in recognition of their energy testing and specifications for the 4th Street Preservation Project, and finally to Sightlines Education in recognition of their community facilitation of the 4th Street Preservation Project, a multi-year partnership that rehabilitated 9 homes in the Dayton's Bluff Historic District.
And if you'd like to start coming forward, you're not done.
Oh, I'm not done. Wow. And to the St. Paul Planning and Economic Development Department, of course, in recognition of their steadfast management and rehabilitation expertise, to the St. Paul Department of Safety and Inspections in recognition of their skillful coordination and oversight of the preservation project, to Glendenning Architectural Services, and to Paul Ormseth Architect in recognition of their sensitive designs for the 4th Street Preservation Project, and to CPMI Incorporated in recognition of their construction management for the 4th Street Preservation Project, and to Ryling Construction, to Croy Custom Homes, to Charles Nosey Construction, and to Anderson Pro Builders in recognition of their quality craftsmanship for the 4th Street Preservation Project, and to Historic St. Paul in recognition of their community planning leadership for the 4th Street Preservation Project.
Real quickly, because I know that everybody's getting ready to move along after we recognize the next wonderful awards. This has been such a great project, and I want to personally call out Christine Boulware from the HPC. Who has invested numerous, actually, uncountable a number of hours with her knowledge and her passion and her expertise to make Dayton's Bluff a better place. And this is just one example of that effort. So thanks so much. And thanks everybody for supporting this. It's been a great project. I encourage you all to drive by and to spend some time in Dayton's Bluff while you're at it.
And occasionally we get to recognize somebody for an entire career rather than a specific project. It's with pleasure that I present the award this year that recognizes an individual for their professional and personal achievements in the field of historic preservation. Barbara Bazat worked in the early years with Alan Lathrop, establishing the Northwest Architectural Archive at the University of Minnesota, and continued for 24 years with the collections until her retirement in 2014. Her knowledge and expertise of the Twin Cities built environment and the people who created it developed as she sorted, described, and managed the material donated to the university. She trained students to process collections and infused them with her love of architecture. Barbara developed efficient methods for bringing legacy paper files online, increasing the accessibility to hundreds of collections. Digitization of our most fragile and interesting material was always a key priority. UMedia Archive, the university's digital repository, holds notable collections with St. Paul ties, including the Edwin Lundy drawings, the Leroy Buffington papers, photographs from the Liebenberg and Kaplan papers. Barb is renowned for her expertise in Minnesota architectural history. Most authors who have utilized the archive benefited from Barb's wisdom and guidance as she pointed them to little-known nuggets of information or images. Her love of St. Paul and her joy in advocating for historic preservation is evident in her many years of service on various boards and committees, most recently serving on the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Commission, and the camaraderie she shares with the preservation community. Please join me in congratulating Barbara Bazat, Her energy and passion knows no bounds when it comes to preserving and celebrating our architectural heritage. A professional award goes to Barbara Bazat in recognition
I can hug you, but it won't work out that way.
This award goes to Barbara Bazat in recognition of her 24-year career at the Northwest Architectural Archives, promoting and cultivating the growth of the collection by engaging a broad preservation community. Thank you, Barbara.
You know, you spend a lot of time doing something that you find is really fun, and pretty soon you discover 25, 30 years have gone by, and you're still working at the university. I need to thank some people who are here because Al Lathrop, founding curator of the Northwest Architectural Archives, was the best mentor anybody could have had to do this job. And we had a lot of good times over the years and a lot of interesting times. It was a bureaucracy, after all, at the university. But getting an award like this from the community you serve, that you serve with delight, is a huge honor. And when Allison called me, I told her I was getting all choked up and teary, and I am now. But at least the picture was easier to take with just one person instead of the last minute. Thanks so much. I really appreciate this.
It's a real honor to be here. My name is Dai Tao. I'm council member representing Ward 1. And I'll tell you why. You know, I travel the country and I look at other cities. I've been up to Portland, LA, Chicago, different parts of the country, and I admire the architect, right, and the effort that some of these cities that they put into, and the time and the energy to preserving their city. And so I'm over there, I'm thinking about them, and I'm imagining what other people are thinking about when they come to visit St. Paul, and to admire the kind of work and the dedication that we try to preserve our history and the design of our city. Things that if you tear down, you can never rebuild again. And that you're preserving that history, and your other city has their champions, but in St. Paul, you're our champion. So thank you so much. Preserve Frogtown, it's a young partnership between Historic St. Paul and Frogtown Neighborhood Association that has already accomplished so much since the founding in 2013. Established to honor and celebrate the rich cultural and architectural heritage of the neighborhood, the two organizations came together to discuss how the 2001 historic survey of the Thomasdale neighborhood could be used to inform and advance historic preservation. The partnership has implemented preservation-based strategy to promote the Frogtown neighborhood, enhance community development activity, and engage Frogtown residents in the celebration of their heritage through creative community building strategy. Preserve Frogtown has since expanded to include Twin City Community Land Bank, the Springboard for the Arts, and their Irrigate project, and other nonprofit and for-profit developers. Today, partners have purchased and rehabbed 6 properties that reflect an aspect of the community history and character, engaged 275 residents, and celebrated its cultural heritage. Additional partners that have also contributed to the success of Preserve Frogtown are Dave Wickerson, Mini Max Construction, Easy Masonry, and Youth Built AmeriCorps program at Guadalupe Alternative Program. A Preservation Organization Award goes to Frogtown Neighborhood Association and to Historic St. Paul in recognition of their partnering and co-founding the Preserve Frogtown in 2013 to celebrate and honor the rich heritage of the neighborhood. And to the Twin City Land Bank in recognition of their financial commitment and property acquisition expertise for Preserve Frogtown. And to Creative Thinkers, their marketing effort and community coordination for Preserve Frogtown. And to Bill Sands for his vision and financial support for Preserve Frogtown, and for the R.F. Bigelow Foundation for their financial support for Preserve Frogtown. Congratulations.
All right, just want to say thank you, and this is about the neighborhood. Frogtown is in the building.
It is about the neighborhood. Frogtown's been a historically transitional place for lots of people, and preserving it is an important part of the city. Thank you.
So here we are at the last award. Wow. My name is Amy Brenmone. I represent the 5th Ward in St. Paul, which includes the East Side, the North End, and Como. And I have to say, before we get into the award, that it's been really inspiring and energizing and really heartwarming to be here tonight. The word I was originally going to say was honored, but this is very inspiring. This year's Stewardship Award celebrates the 100th anniversary of the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory. The English Victorian-style conservatory was fashioned after the Palm House in Kew, England, to grow and display a wide variety of plants and botanicals. These plants and botanicals still thrive today, which is a testament to the commitment of many, including the City of St. Paul, private donors, and countless volunteers. Work on an exhibition in celebration of the 100th anniversary began 7 months prior to the public opening in April 1st, 2015, and was a labor of love for staff, volunteers, and historians. This exhibit celebrates its esteemed traditions, highlights growth and adaptations through the decades, and reminds us how perilously close St. Paul came to forfeiting this accessible botanical treasure. Indeed, many of the early Victorian-style glass conservatories built in the 1880s and 1920s succumbed to mismanagement and structural ruin. But the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory has fulfilled an iconic sense of place as an architectural centerpiece of Como Regional Park for over 100 years. The conservatory is a family tradition that continues through the generations. Through perseverance, thousands upon thousands of volunteer hours, countless generous donors, and a deep respect for preservation, the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory is thriving today. This year's Stewardship Award goes to St. Paul Parks and Recreation in recognition of their 100-year commitment to preserving an architectural heritage and rich traditions of the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory, a Como Park landmark. Congratulations.
Well, good evening. I hate being the bearer between you and cake, so I'll be very brief. My name is Michelle Furr. I'm the director at Como Park Zoo and Conservatory, and we have 2 staff members who worked on this exhibition for the 100-year anniversary. Tina Dombrowski, who is our horticulture manager, and Susie Van Blaerkom, who is our education and conservation curator. I want to thank the St. Paul Heritage Preservation Committee and jury for selecting us for this award. 2015 was a great year for us as we celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory. And Frederick Nussbaumer would be the reason why we're here today. He was the Como Park superintendent in the late 1800s and really campaigned for his glass jewel house for our conservatory. He petitioned for just $50 for the original set of plans and just $60,000 for the building of the construction that happened in 1913. And when we opened the doors on November 15th, we had 3,000 guests in that first year. Now we see over 2 million visitors each year that are marveled by this conservatory. And over through the decades, the community has been our supporters when we had the hailstorm in the 60s along the way, as well as when it came close to closing. It was the community that rallied and helped to support and continue the tradition of the Marjorie McNeely Conservatory in this community. And you should be very proud of that. It is countless hours of volunteer work and staff that it's a labor of love to have the conservatory stand as it is today. And we're just honored to be accepting this award this year. Thank you.
Congratulations and one last applause for all of the award recipients. And we thank the presenters too. Thanks for celebrating with us.
We do have 2 more recognition of service awards for preservation commissioners that have stepped down during 2015. For the past several years, the HPC has recognized their service during this awards event, and their retiring commissioners are presented with an artwork that often highlights a local artist that also celebrates the history of St. Paul. We ask Renee Hutter-Barnes and Barbara Brazat to come forward and accept this artwork in recognition of your service. We do have a much larger group of people here tonight than we've had the last 20 years or so. In the 40 years, there have been 110 people who've served as commissioners, some of them chair and vice chair, secretary, executive committee. And it's because of the foresight and the vision and the commitment of those people that we're here and that we're still doing preservation work in St. Paul. I think that I can remember at least one of them saying, don't talk so much about the past, it's not the direction we're going. And that's how we got here and how we continue to move forward, knowing the importance of the preservation effort. So, would everyone here who has been a Heritage Preservation Commission commissioner please stand? Those of you who were chair, how many of you would like to have just a few remarks now? All right. It's also important that I recognize the present HPC staff, who are, of course, responsible, along with the AIA staff, for putting this together, but most importantly, for the day in, day out work that keeps this alive. So the people that we all know as Amy, Christine, Allison, Fred, and Bill, would you please stand so that we can acknowledge you? As part of that recognition of what the commissioners have contributed and what people involved in this movement over the last 40 years have contributed, I'm hoping that many of you noticed the incredible storyboards that were out in the party area. And that's a beginning of what we want to do in preserving the history of preservation in St. Paul. So those of you who can say, wait a minute, they left out this or this or this, whether it's a Post-it note or an email or a phone call or whatever, if you would each take another moment to look at those. I believe that they're on display out here where we're going to go in a minute, but that will really help flesh out the contributions that so many of you have made. And I apologize wholeheartedly that I can't single so many of you out for the contribution that you made. Thank you for what you've done.